Hello, I'm Sarah Jackson, nurse practitioner leading the Bromley Homeless Health Team, and today we are here to discuss drugs and alcohol, but more specifically, why does addiction hit differently amongst rough sleepers and homeless communities? I'm joined as previously by Kim Sutton, who's the service lead for Bromley Homeless Charity here in Bromley, and also by Daniel Norman, who works for the London RHEST team. So we're going to start by passing you over to Dan so he can explain exactly who he is and what RHEST is.
Thank you very much for having me. As mentioned, my name is Daniel. The RHEST team is operated by Phoenix Futures, who's heavily involved in addiction support around England. The RHEST team is a pan-London service that supports rough sleepers and homeless communities with addiction, both drug and alcohol.
So you go out to actually see them on the street, or do you see them in their homes? Or
we are very much out in the community. We do support some people in temporary accommodation, but we go where the people are, and that can often mean on the sidewalk or near a station.
Well, welcome and thank you for joining us today. So as everyone knows, we've got Bromley Homeless Health Team directly here at Bromley Homeless Charity. The people that I've seen here in clinic, I can pretty much say from my figures that 3/4 of them come in and they are users of drugs and or alcohol. And when I say users, these are the people that are taking more than the 14 units of alcohol a week, and some are on cannabis. We have had people that have got injectable drug issues and other issues, including over-the-counter medications that they're addicted to and things. So it is a problem. Why is it such a big problem in people experiencing homelessness? What are your experiences in terms of this issue that we're facing?
In terms of our service here, what we often see it as a social activity that then becomes a coping mechanism, especially with young people. I don't know about Dan, that's what we see here in my 20 odd years of doing this job. We often see young people that are in crisis, but how it starts from a trauma. They then use it as a social activity that then becomes a coping mechanism for them, and then that becomes an issue. It impacts homelessness, it impacts families. I believe that the support in England is nowhere near good enough for what we're seeing at the moment. We're seeing a rise in it, and as Dan rightly says, he goes out on outreach and sees it. What we see when people are housed normally is a stabilisation of that, but it doesn't stop there. It's multi-layered. So we can place someone somewhere safe, but unless there's a multi-layered approach to their care, and that means you've got to start with what's driving it, where they're getting it from, and all that stuff that comes with that. Unless there's a multi-layered approach, that person will relapse very, very quickly. We have community detox that works at some times, but it is what it is. Once they've stopped detoxing, the chances are they're going to find it again. And these people are known to other users. And what we often see with the more entrenched rough sleepers is everyone gets their UC on different days. So they'll supply it one day. You've got a 7-day-a-week supply going on because they're all supplying each other. They take care of each other. They're like a little cohort on their own. And actually to take someone from that, place them somewhere safe that you think they should be, you're taking away from their family as such, the people that did care about them. So what we see there, yes, it does hit hardest there because they're trying to find something that they're missing. That's what we see here.
I've also seen where one patient of ours, or client should I say, turned into a patient. I had to send him into hospital because he was actually very, very unwell with a really severe infection of a wound which was turning into sepsis. Sent him into hospital, and because he was part of this circle, this cycle that people go through, they actually found him in hospital, and he ended up self-discharging against people's better judgment and guidance, and he ended up going because it was his turn to supply the round and supply the money and everything. But what is the answer? Is there any answer to this?
I think where we started was kind of perfect, is understanding it as a coping mechanism. And I almost say that the addiction has to be viewed as the solution. And what I mean by that is when we have a bad day, we grab a drink. When we get in a fight with our partner, we have a drink. Our kid disappoints us, we're angry at them, we have a drink. So the drink becomes the thing we do when life gets difficult or uncomfortable. And it's impossible to remove a coping mechanism and not replace it. You have to find new, healthier versions of a way to live your life. And that is tremendously difficult. And when we look at rough sleepers and homelessness, we're imagining one of the worst situations an individual can face. Outside of being in a war, homelessness, kind of at the top level. It's all about survival. And based on the clients I see, they talk about how it's really nice to be able to check out and not have to be aware every day, 24 hours a day, of what's going on. And sleeping in the cold is a lot less intense if you actually feel warm, which is what drugs and alcohol can definitely do. So you're basically saying to someone, oh, that thing you used to survive, you need to stop that. Yeah. And that's not a winning argument.
No. The narrative needs to change around. Stop calling people addicts. Once you put that label on, then the perception is that they are one thing. Take that out of there, treat them as people that have got mental and medical health needs and housing needs. Just see it that way. If you keep putting labels on people, which I know is a thing to do these days, this is how we work, but I don't see our clients that way. I see that anyone that's got an alcohol or drug issue is someone with a mental health and medical problem, not someone that needs a label attached to them and they will forever be that. I mean, we've seen people in here that are coming back after 10 years, still on the same programme. That's not working, is that? That's not working. The narrative needs to change at a very young age. Intervention in schools. I think if you start in schools with people that are like sponges, who are the people that are going to get affected the most, start there first. That's where it needs to change. And in fact, ketamine at the moment is so cheap to buy. It's cheaper than alcohol. There lies your problem. But that's a problem for the police and politics to deal with. That's not a problem but it's becoming a problem for us as a society, because that's where kids are going to get their kicks from at the moment. That turns into something else, because the people that they're buying from, the people that are using it, and they're doing it in a cycle as well. You're seeing a lot of young people. We will see one young person here, but we know there's probably 10 of them doing it with them. But no one seems to want to grab hold of that and go, why is this happening to these young people? And then they grow into entrenched, as we see it here, adults with the same issues. And it's really, really, really quite sad to see that society still points the finger and goes, well, they're an addict, what do you expect? Where is the incentive for them to get better? And as Dan rightly points out, what's the alternative?
That raises an interesting question. Do you think the term addict or addiction creates a degree of helplessness?
Yes.
Both in the individual and also those around them?
Yes. Yeah. As soon as you say it. Yeah. That's it.
Yeah.
And it's expected. It's expected. Then I've always felt that because, I could be really controversial here and say this. You wouldn't see a cancer patient the same way. You don't see someone with a drug and alcohol problem. See them that way. It's an illness that needs treatment. It's not you say addict and everyone goes, oh, it's expected.
Yeah, I think it happens because all of a sudden we remove the word choice.
Yeah.
So we say, cancer, not a choice. But choosing to drink is a choice. Yeah. And I disagree with that. I think that's the sentiment that's often come across. And there needs to be a little bit of nuance in that argument.
Yeah. And I think you need to come at it from, also it's portrayed a certain way. If you look at it, it's portrayed a certain way. But actually the reality of it is, if you was to see some of what me, Dan and you see every day, the reality is a very, very poor state of health this person is in. That's mentally and physically. They often don't have homes to live in. They often have family that are no longer supporting them. So the only people they can go to, the people that they've gone to before. And as Dan rightly said, it becomes what was a social activity is now a coping mechanism. Where do I get my next fix from? And I know who to go to, and I know they'll give it to me. I don't know how you're going to control that, how you deal with that in this country, because it's become such a big issue. And if you look at what you said, Dan, about drinking, everyone celebrates with a drink in this country. It's such a thing to do. Let's get the champagne, blah, 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 blah. It's normalised, and I know. So I'll give you two incidences here. I've had a bank manager who lost everything but was treated so differently by every service, including the GP, because they were a bank manager but drinking 4 bottles of wine a day. You put that and flip that over to someone who hasn't got a job, who's on universal credit, who's buying that cans of lager, they'll get treated a different way. Why is that?
No, there's a lot of discrimination, especially around when you say the word addict.
Yeah.
There's discrimination, but when you, as you say, flip it before and say actually a lot of these people, it is an addiction rather than addict.
Yes.
It's an addictive substance, all of them. A lot of them have got underlying mental health issues, especially the people that I've seen, that they're undiagnosed. And actually sometimes, unfortunately, it is the way, it's a long process to get referrals and then to go down a pathway of diagnosis and things. In the meantime, let's smoke a joint, let's have a bit of alcohol, because it does actually stop me hearing a voice in my head, it calms me down, it helps me sleep. And it's a very big thing, with a lot of discrimination, and that's why automatically
it's huge.
People just turn their back, because it's almost, I find with this cohort, it's your own fault. That's what we get all the time.
Yeah.
It's your fault, then you deal with it, and not going to help, or why should I help, because it's not going to work. Whereas, here it's like, okay, it didn't work the first time, they come back in, I'm not done, I know they've come back, can we try again? Yes. And it's literally just that, and it's going to be that one time where actually they accept help.
I get that frustration, even as someone who works in it. Someone trying for the 6th or 7th time can be frustrating, sad to see, disappointed. But I think that's where really amazing stuff happens. If you stand by. I think one of the biggest problems is for the community itself. They take that on. So we talk about shame being kind of like that big element, or just general embarrassment, or deciding that their life actually doesn't have value. They don't contribute anything. And that's been told to them throughout their life. So of course they're going to take that on board, and then it can feel hopeless.
Yeah. We've all failed at things in our lives, and it may not be to the greater extent that they've lost most of what they've had, but there's no reason why they can't rebuild that. And if you give someone the hope to be able to do that, I think, in fact, what I'd like to see here is a drug program being run from this place, how we see it and how we want it run, and that is we deal with the person holistically, the whole person, not just the issue that they presented themselves with. Because I think if you start, I know it's costly, but actually it's a false economy when you think about the extent of what is happening. So a drug addict, as everyone wants to call them, will go into A&E many times in a year because they've not got that GP, or they've not got that trusted person they can go to. That in itself costs money. The bed hopping that happens when they get someone in and they know they need treatment, they're not going to stay there. It's a wrong place for them. But I think if you have places like ours and charities like ours and this health hub, and run it from a place like this where they are in charge of it, ask them what they need. Why are we telling them what you need? You tell me what you need. If they don't want to stop, then fine. That's their choice. But if they really do, tell me how we can help you do that, because they're best placed to know. We only know. I've not used drugs. I don't know. I'm not in their shoes, but listen to what they've got to say. And I can tell you now, a lot of them will turn around and say to you, the programs that are actually running at the moment do not work. You're replacing one addiction with another most of the time. And then you'll say, well, go abstinence. And well, that doesn't work either. But if there was places that they could go, be supported in, and as you say, Sarah, it's a long term. It's a lifelong thing they have to learn to deal with.
Yeah, it's a condition at the end of the day, isn't it? And it is learning how to do with it. I think the best thing with our clinic is they've got yourselves trying to support them. We are holistic. We would, it would be good to add more people into the mix, which we will do if we get more funding to carry on.
It's always fun.
But at least they can, if you guys, when they come in and we see that they've got a problem, you'll ask me to see them, and then at least I can say, look, I'm finding out that you've got high blood pressure, you've got a high pulse, I'm not happy with this, let's do full round of bloods. Then I can sit them down and go, actually your health is quite poor by staying on this path, and then we can give this could, and differential diagnoses and things. Whereas, as you say, when people just look at the one, they're just blindsided by like, oh, they're an addict. It's because they drink loads of alcohol. That's why they've got a high pulse rate and things like that. There's nothing going on, and don't check the liver and things like this. It's not looking at people as a whole and just putting a label on it. You said before that we're finding more and more people with problems with drugs and alcohol. Is this because they're cheaper, more accessible, or was something done differently in the past that worked better that we've lost?
I don't know if anything worked better that we've lost. I mean, there was a lot of community care that went on that, funding has disintegrated. But I don't think we've done anything. We haven't changed the way we work in this country when it comes to that. It's always been a topic that people don't want to discuss. And most people you talk to have tried a drug of sorts in their life. I'd be very surprised. I mean, even I tried cannabis as a child, not as a child, but as a teenager. Hated it, had an asthma attack and ended up in hospital. But everyone's tried it. But it's looking at the education of young people and understanding what it is that they're needing, where they're going with all of that. Because what we see here is people between the ages of 18 and 25. There is a trauma normally involved in that. Something's happened and they found that is the way they cope, whether it's drink or drugs. But it doesn't seem to ever have been picked up what this kid was going through. We can see lots of spaces lots of gaps where services have failed this person. And you can see it. You can go through a case and you can see why wasn't something done then. The intervention isn't there. And I don't know why. I can't explain that. I don't know. I haven't been that involved in drug services only in this borough. And outside of that, I've seen it. I've seen the stuff that's going on in Scotland, and look at the backlash they got for that, for the needle exchange programme. There's always going to be those people that say, no, don't help. I don't know what the answer is. I think it is a multi-layered thing and it's a multi-agency approach. There's no one service that's doing anything differently apart from St Thomas's, where they have that place where they can go and they're kept there, and then there's a step down programme for them. But like you say, it's an ongoing. They need support for the rest of their life, and that's costly, and that for them, for anyone that's got issues like that, it's a daily fight.
I think there are two very real sides to it. There's the support side of it, and then the responsibilities of the individual. From an intervention perspective, it's frustrating to quote-unquote fail. And it's very difficult publicly to defend a service or a series of services that look like they're constantly failing. But that doesn't actually mean that no good work is taking place. In my service, overwhelmingly, most of the people that I get referred to tell me straight up that they don't want to stop using. It's not on their agenda. They don't see how that'll be particularly helpful. So most of my time is spent talking to them and understanding that decision and see if there's room to change their mind. But the idea that I'm going to put them on this conveyor belt and that's going to be, we'll get them into structured treatment and do this, that's not helpful. That's just going to guarantee a repeated cycle.
I think when you say that, when you turn around and say that they don't want to stop, that's when things need to escalate. That's when we need to find out what it is that's going on. It doesn't mean to say they have to, but it's understanding why that person has made that decision. And a lot of the time they're being driven by their need to do that. Yeah. However, that's the way I train my team. You need to find out, just dig deep. And in fact, as Sarah's proved by being here for 3 years, some of the most entrenched rough sleepers will turn up here when they're in crisis. They need help.
Yeah, and it seems, it's weird to me that having that conversation is seen as a whole lot of effort or outside of the norm.
Yeah.
It's like, wait, you're just going to talk to them? You're not going to fill out an assessment? You're not going to tick 12 boxes so we can put them in some sort of group? Yeah, I just really want to know how they spend their morning and whether or not they have any friends. That's actually where I want to start. I want to start, how do they wake up?
Well, that's a good place to start. And I do think the services should be run by the service users, not by the likes of me. When we started this whole thing up here, we went to the service users and asked them what they wanted. It's not what I think they need. It's not what I determine what they need. They should tell us what they need. And I think you'll find those people that have successfully come off of drugs and alcohol, I mean, they've successfully stopped using, but it's an everyday program for them to keep going. We have someone here who is a counsellor for us here, who's an ex-user, and he will tell you that every day is a battle. But as long as you've got people around you supporting that battle, and sometimes that's what it is, and actually other users that have come are the people that can help them. You know, years ago, and when you said to me about what happened years ago when we stopped, years ago, we used to have wet shelters here, and a wet shelter was where people would come, they could drink alcohol. The chaos, it was chaotic. And the reason they didn't want them in the dry shelters was because they thought they're going to interfere with people that need or are in different stages of recovery. That's not working, is it, if you allow someone to carry on doing that and not say to them, is there anything we can do to help you? Oh, here's a can of lager. That doesn't work. For me, it doesn't work. You know, treat everyone the same. Whatever level they're at, whatever recovery path they're on, treat them equally. The inequality that we see, especially from rough sleepers, is immense. The gatekeeping and everything. Unless someone is advocating for them, and I mean someone professional like me or Dan or you, they get nowhere. They're knocking on doors trying to get help, and then they wonder why. People wonder why they are so sick. You know what? It's easier if I'm back on the street. It's easier to be there. It's less stress. Got no overheads. There's no one telling me what to do. And that's what you find, especially with the entrenched rough sleepers. That is a big, big issue.
And then the bigger question is, how do you adjust that behavior? Because a lot of the times you'll see that as, oh, it's easier to not engage with services, so I'll run away. And I get that. I get how frustrating the service is to be. But also, as an individual and their individual responsibility, how do you work with someone to encourage them to be an advocate for themselves?
You just keep going.
Yeah.
You just keep going. You don't give up.
But that's not interesting, and that's not big, bold lights really cool.
Yeah.
And it's difficult. I agree with you, but I think it's difficult to sell that idea that you just keep going, that you just continue to have that conversation, that you just continue to work with someone, because it's like, well, then they may never change. And I mean, my service, kind of the biggest thing hanging over our head from is lack of referrals. And we're a pan-London service. So
what do you put that down to, Dan? What do you put that down to?
I don't know how to best describe it. We're supposed to get those who fall through the gaps.
Yeah.
The idea is they get referred into your CGL, your VIA, your ARC, depending on your location, the various drug and alcohol support venues. So I think because we exist as kind of this extra thing, it's like, no, I'd rather just send them over to where I know. There may be more to it than that, but that, at least from my 14, 15 months in this role, that seems to be the big thing. We are this new thing, and sometimes it takes a while to convince people that this new thing is helpful. And that's actually, on a smaller scale, true with the clients as well.
Yeah, I suppose, I'm going to see it from that perspective. I think what we see first probably is that they all see that they need housing first. They need to, a lot of the time we see, if we're sitting on forums, a lot of what we hear, Sarah and I hear, I don't know if you hear this, is businesses saying, oh, can they be removed from the high street? They're affecting our business. Or it's always about how it's affecting someone else. And I get that. Everyone's got a living to do. They become the problem. But instead of looking at how the problem came about, they're looking at them as the individual is the problem, not how that all came about. I mean, we have an alcohol issue in this country that is huge. Make no mistake. Everyone's in the pub. Everyone, celebrations, whatever it is, the pubs are full because we've accepted it in this country as something that is the go-to drug to go to, really. So we've never really challenged that. Government's never really challenged it. No one's really challenged it. But then you see the drug users that we see, and it's always their problem.
Well, it's tolerable if we can keep those people hidden away,
exactly,
right?
Exactly, Dan, exactly that. If we hide them away and move them. When I get told, can you remove someone? No. We're not going to go and get them. They expect me to send my team out to go and get them, pull them off the street and bring them here and to do what exactly? No, that's not what I'm going to do. We're going to talk to them. But, you can't drag someone away from... And normally they've got all their stuff. And when I try and explain to people about their belongings, all they see is a couple of bags. But in them bags is their life. You try taking off of a rough sleeper them bags and watch them come after you. That's their life in them bags. They could have paperwork, they could have on little scraps of paper numbers of their sisters or brothers, anything in there. You don't be touching their stuff. And I think when we get told by people that don't know about rough sleeping, oh, we'll go and talk to them, we'll have a chat with them, I'll even store this stuff here for them. But actually, if they want to keep that with them, that's their right. Not just take it off. I've seen bags being ripped away from people and stuff. Yeah, I've seen that happen. Tents being ripped away, and that's their life in there. And just because we as a society, I don't personally see it as the fault of the person, I see it as a fault of society. I wouldn't drag someone else's house off of them unless I had good reason to. So why drag a tent off of someone and their bag? We've seen people have their sleeping bags whipped from them. For why? Why? What are you going to do with that person now then? You've taken all their bits, so where do you think they're going to go? So I think as a country, we show compassion. I've known it in Bromley how much compassion there is, because we see it when we do drives here. So if we're doing a charity drive, people will donate. But I tell you, when homelessness becomes sexy, it's when it's cold. And people feel like, oh, can I donate this? Can I give that? But you know what? It's all year round. And it needs to be, attacked that way. Let's find out what the root problem is. Don't individually take people and go, they're the issue.
I think that we ask, what can we do about it? You're never going to absolve someone of their own individual choice. And we are all guilty of getting in our own way. Everybody universally. It seems to be the human condition. Yeah. But if we are to offer groups of people that we don't understand, disagree with, etc., a degree of tolerance and dignity, does that create an environment where we are more capable of kind of crawling out or building ourselves up or reinventing ourselves? And I think, I don't have a 100% answer to that question. I still think it would be nice if we treated everyone just a little more dignity, a little more understanding.
Yeah.
Because I do think that would create an environment where you can maybe expect more from an individual. But you can't expect someone who weekly is having their property stripped from them or being pointed out for shame and embarrassment.
Can I ask a question? It's still on the alcohol and drug subject, obviously, but actually we say about people becoming homeless because they've had issues and problems and have gone down this path that has led to this. I have seen a few people I have not necessarily dealt with because they've come in such a crisis point. It is your team, Kim, that's needed to deal with it. We've had young people, say 18, 19-year-olds, where the family are bringing them in saying, I can't cope, can't deal with them anymore, can't deal with their alcohol, drug problems, I want them gone. So that they'd be making these very young people homeless and street homeless as well. And then we've had other people who are older that are in full-on crisis of drug addiction to the point where they're being very aggressive and things, and the family are bringing them in, and they've lost quite a few family, but then there's that one person that is almost mollycoddling, really trying to be supportive in helping to avoid homelessness. Sometimes you can't avoid it, as we know. What advice would you give to these friends and family that they're at their last tether? What can they do? Is there anything that they can do to try and prevent homelessness? Because sometimes we've had to say, you've just got to let them go and actually let the authority take them, because when they're at crisis point, that is the best option for them. It's a very difficult question because it is, so many people, it's for the individual themselves as well, and each case is an individual case. But, this is ultimately when people come in, they say, we don't want them to be homeless, we don't want them to get there. But what is
I would say to them, what's the end game here? What do you want the end game to be? You know that person, if that's your child, you know them. What do you think the end game's going to be for them? You tell me what you want for them, and then ask them what they want for themselves. They're probably two very different things. They normally are. Yeah. So the family will come in with a ideation, this is what we need, this is what they... And then I often say, okay, you've had to just say, let me speak to them on their own. And then you'll find a totally different story. and things that they thought they didn't know they knew. The trauma side of it for young people, I think, for me, is the biggest issue. Parents, and I'm a parent, as you know, Sarah, I'm a parent of kids, grandkids and foster kids, right? There's not much I haven't seen, but I do know this. Don't matter how many doors you close, how quietly you speak, your children will hear everything. So if you think you've kept things hidden from them, no, you haven't. They will know. And often what they're hearing, frustration comes out. You say things in frustration to your kids. Sometimes when you're frustrated, you'll say things that you don't mean. Have the ability to say, I'm sorry, but this is where I'm at right now. Be honest with that person. But what you've got to do is listen to what they're going through, because it is them. The effect on you may be great, but let me tell you, the effect on them is even greater. So listen to them. And whatever needs to be done, whatever that young person or that individual needs, is where you need to be going. But I do get that it does put an awful lot of pressure on homes. It does put a lot of pressure on people having to deal with, I mean, for instance, what we see here with people in social housing, what often becomes a problem then becomes antisocial behaviour, which then will affect the tenancy of the person that's living there. They're often threatened with that. So you've got a big housing association saying to the mother, if you don't do something about this, we're going to end the tenancy, and this is what we're going to do. This one individual. So then that mother has no other calls but to say you need to leave because you've probably got other kids in there trying to safeguard herself. That's not where it should. That's not what should happen. All services need to come together and say, what can we do to support this individual? And yes, as you rightly point out, Dan, people have a responsibility for themselves most of the time. But actually, when you're in the throes of taking drugs and alcohol, I don't think you've got capacity to understand sometimes what you're doing. So, but that's never taken into consideration a lot of the time.
To answer as well, to add and to answer the question more directly, I think when it's at a crisis point, it is actually responsibility of professional services. Whether a parent is an absolutely amazing parent and has just slipped up, or is on the other end of the extreme and is incredibly abusive. The crisis has reached that point because all parties involved haven't done what they need to do. They haven't approached it the right way, be that accident or intentional. It's no vile towards them in any way. When we see that situation, are the community support addressing the needs? Are they stepping up in that situation? And a lot of times I don't think we acknowledge that it's gotten to a crisis point. Because we're like, oh, this is the first time I'm meeting you. So therefore we can kind of look at it and say, no. Most people try to avoid using services until they absolutely have to, especially around addiction and mental health.
Definitely.
Yeah. So yeah, you need professional services to kind of step up and say, okay, this is what we're going to do, and actually deliver on that. The other side is, can we reduce those crisis points? And that becomes education and support and early intervention, all that. But yeah, directly with the crisis stuff, I actually encourage a lot of families to take that step back. The support has probably become enabling, and it is unfair to expect someone to dramatically change how they help someone when they don't really know what they're doing. And the communication has gotten so bad, whether it's between a parent and a child or an elderly individual and their family, because they've become a problem. That person, that's the problem. It's like, no, there's a whole mess of stuff that are an issue. There's a whole mess of problems. Clearly you guys are not able to talk about that. Clearly you guys are not able to work together anymore. That's okay. Let us have a stab at it.
And I also think you have to understand that the infrastructure in this country takes an awful long time to sometimes pick that up.
Yeah.
So it's not always as easy as saying, I know where you're coming from, Dan. It's not always that easy, because the impact on services right now is so great since COVID. I mean, it's huge. There's mental health waiting lists. There's waiting lists for just about everything. So when you say that, I agree. And we have done it here. I've gone, just open the door, let them out there, and then we'll dial 999. But I can tell you something, me and Sarah have sat here with a very mentally unwell person who was addicted for 9 hours waiting for someone to come and help us. And in the end, I just said, we would just be sat. I said, open the door, let them run into the traffic, and let the police come, because we had no other option. And sometimes that's how you feel. You feel stuck. I wish there was. I wish we could just pick up the phone and go, we need help here with this individual. But yeah, the services are under so much strain right now that is kind of near impossibility unless you're in the right borough, the right area, and you get picked up at the right time.
Yeah.
Which is the whole reason for emphasizing early intervention.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that's education of early intervention is the way forward, because if you catch someone early enough, you could probably change their behaviour. But once they're in crisis, that's going to take a long, long time to bring them back to where they were when they started. And someone always starts somewhere.
They need a really compelling argument to want to make that change.
Yeah. What's the alternative? You've got to give them the alternative.
Yeah. And they've got to discuss, like, one of the weird things that I've kind of encountered in working in the field is I'll ask them occasionally why they want to stop. And the reason is always so amorphous and so out there. And I'm always like, no, it's got to be simple and accessible and like tangible. Getting up in the morning and not wanting to puke your brains out is far more real than wanting to be a good parent. As weird as it sounds. But like, people try their hardest and they're still not good parents. Yeah. Good parenting is really difficult.
It is. Totally. But I'm still messing up now.
Yeah. So the idea that if you're using and you have a kid that you're not in contact with and you're going to stop and you're all of a sudden going to be there for them, it's a lovely idea, but it's not what's going to get you to tomorrow. So a lot of those big goals, those big dreams, I very much try to skim down, and we try to find something super duper tiny that goes, would this make life a little more enjoyable? Would this make you laugh? Would this make you smile? Would this make you feel like you are more capable than people give you credit for?
And that's it.
But yeah, you get these huge dreams and aspirations, and it's like, it's great that you have that.
But let's start small.
Yeah.
I agree. It's about small steps. And people say, I hear it so many times, but it's true. You know, take that first step and then let's see where we go with that. And you know what, if you do relapse, and what? Yeah. You know, we all, after a while in our lives, so you can go back. It doesn't mean to say you beat yourself up, and a lot of them do here. They'll relapse and they'll go, and they're beating themselves up so badly because they've relapsed. And I go, hang on. So what?
I mean, it's ridiculously cheesy, but I always look at it like sports. Most great players, they have to lose the big game. Everyone has that loss. Yeah. And it's like that could be a step back if you let it be, but it could also be one of those steps on the journey that we normally have to take. You need to be able to understand your weaknesses and your strengths. And sometimes that means a misstep, and you're like, ooh, I didn't know that about me. And that gives you that autonomy and that strength to be like, all right, now I know myself a little bit better. I can actually make those changes. I view my job is to show people how small a step can have this huge impact. It's how the ridiculously tiny thing. Yeah. It is almost crazy to me how many people I work with on the streets who have such severe anxiety. Yeah. Talking about, you're sitting on the street, people are walking past you, and you are constantly petrified and uncomfortable.
Very aware. They're very aware.
Yeah. And it's like, that needs to be challenged in such a safe and healthy way for us to have any shot at real growth.
I mean, it's true that you often see people walking past people that are on the street like they've not seen them. Stop shutting your eyes, maybe just go and ask, are you okay? Sometimes that's all you need. If people that were homeless and rough sleeping felt that society, instead of people like me, Dan and you, were around, if they felt society cared, things might change. But all the while you just walk past or step over. Like I've said to you before, Sarah, I've been out with the rough sleeping teams and watched the PDSA come and take a dog from a rough sleeper who was clearly very unwell. We were waiting for an ambulance. They stepped over that person to take that dog to a place of safety. And I'm looking, going, what about this person? Where's the place of safety for them? You care about the dog, but you don't care about the person. There's something wrong in society when that is what we do. That's just my opinion. My
No,
personal opinion.
the motivation is very easy to understand. It's we view the dog as helpless and unable to fend for itself.
Oh yeah.
Where with the individual, it's why haven't you done X, Y, or Z?
And on that note, we will have to end the podcast. Thank you so much both for actually having a chat. Obviously, we're never going to solve this issue.
Don't be so pessimistic. We'll solve it.
Probably in our lifetime, maybe not even the next, but it's building awareness about people experiencing homelessness and actually talking about it, making people more aware, and just making people again understand that these are people at the end of the day. Treat them like it. So thank you so much for listening, and we will see you next time. Thank you, guys.